Who killed Haven Studio? In an era of unprecedented financial success for the video game industry, studio closures and layoffs are also reaching an all-time high. One of those studios whose fate is currently hanging in the balance is Sony's Haven Studio. Originally spearheaded by renowned industry veteran Jade Raymond, Haven quickly assembled a formidable team of seasoned developers. This collective expertise immediately drew the attention and significant investment of Sony Interactive Entertainment, which ultimately led to an uncharacteristically swift acquisition. However, as the studio expanded, an insidious rot began to set in. The initial burst of rapid progress slowed to a crawl, public updates grew scarce, and the eager community became increasingly anxious. It became clear that something fundamental had shifted within Haven Studio. Something had tragically devoured it from the inside out.
Diversity and inclusion.
Concerns regarding the influence of diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI initiatives within the studio first gained significant traction 2 years ago, coinciding with the reveal trailer for Haven Studio's inaugural title, Fairgames. This AAA live service team-based extraction shooter quickly became a focal point of online debate, drawing criticism for what many perceived as a politically charged tone. The trailer was widely lambasted by the online community, with particular emphasis placed on its perceived extreme left-wing dog whistles. The most prominent of these was the phrase, "Eat the rich," flashing across the screen early in the trailer. This slogan, widely recognized as a rallying cry among anti-capitalist, left-leaning anarchy groups, advocates for aggressive action against established wealth and power structures. As many in the comment section astutely observed, a striking tonal dichotomy emerged from this messaging. It's a multi-million-dollar game company poised to sell a title replete with microtransactions and battle passes for an $800 console, yet they're simultaneously virtue signaling about the wealth disparity. This blatant contradiction did not go unnoticed, as evidenced by the trailer's dismal like-to-dislike ratio of nearly 59,000 dislikes to 4,000 likes. This stark disparity underscored the perceived disconnect between the game's marketing, its players, and its thematic elements. This is where most public commentary ceased, with many simply acknowledging the failure of the trailer and dismissing the studio. My own inquiry, however, compelled me to delve deeper, prompting further investigation into the underlying dynamics at play, and it's significantly worse than you would expect. When we look at Haven and compare it to other studios, the most striking parallel that comes to mind is Ubisoft Toronto. Both studios burst onto the scene with immense ambition, staffed by incredibly talented individuals who boast extensive resumes in game development. They were each backed by major corporations, providing them with the substantial resources necessary to chase their lofty goals, and perhaps the most significant, both were launched under the leadership of industry veteran Jade Raymond. Under Raymond's guidance, Ubisoft Toronto quickly found its footing, delivering its first AAA success with Splinter Cell Blacklist. The studio also played a crucial collaborative role in other major Ubisoft titles like Assassin's Creed Unity and Far Cry 4. Raymond effectively laid such a robust foundation that even after her departure, the studio continued to thrive, releasing hits like Far Cry 5, Far Cry 6, and Watch Dogs Legion. To this day, Ubisoft Toronto remains a powerhouse, currently working on the highly anticipated Splinter Cell remake. In stark contrast, Haven appears to be facing considerable headwinds in getting their debut game off the ground. The reception thus far has been less than stellar, and remarkably, Jade Raymond has already exited the studio, even before an official gameplay trailer for their title has been unveiled. So what happened? Despite the notable similarities, one crucial distinction that I've observed between the two studios lies in a fundamental tonal shift in their development and hiring processes. It's a shift in the very framework that guides the studios, a change in mindset that frankly has contributed to the downfall of numerous studios buckling under the weight of their own progressive ideologies.
You told us that the main focus was hiring the best from some of the best from the industry.
Yeah, I mean, we've had great success. I think so far we've built up the studio to 350 people. And of course, I think it's some of the most talented people in the game industry to recruit some of the best talent in the industry. We have some of the best talent from Montreal that came over from the Montreal studio with me.
Merit-based bonuses, best practices,
best talent, most talented people in the game industry.
What would you say are the key elements of that sort of being that haven? What would you say are the values, I guess?
We want to actually be known for having a diverse team, diversity and inclusion, diversity programs. We have a diverse recruiting process, an inclusive recruiting process. These values are important to us. They're probably the most important thing.
Oh, fuck. Oh my my god.
Haven Studios burst onto the scene with a core team of approximately 54 industry veterans, a figure reported by GameIndustry.biz in October 2021. This wasn't just any group of developers. A remarkable 70% hailed from Ubisoft Montreal. This shared history meant they weren't just colleagues, but a cohesive unit that had consistently delivered blockbuster titles across various studios for years. It was this exceptional synergy that captivated PlayStation. Herman Hulse, head of PlayStation Studios, articulated this admiration, stating, "We have been very impressed with how Haven is coming together. They are exceeding a lot of the plans, including in terms of time, which very rarely happens in game development. This commendation underscores the studio's formidable efficiency and the high caliber of this initial team." By July 2022, Haven Studios had expanded considerably. Based on the latest public figures that I was able to find in my research, they more than doubled their workforce to 106 employees, with an additional 5 interns joining in 2023. The rapid growth was guided by a deliberate hiring framework, specifically emphasizing diversity, equity, and inclusion.
We actually strategically made the decision to hire a recruiter who's focused on diversity and inclusion. Her name is Medina, and she has a background not only as a, in talent acquisition, but also in putting up diversity programs. And so she's designed a brand new recruiting framework and process for us that's really made to be inclusive from the start.
Not wanting to dox anyone, a lot of information has been redacted, but as you can see, Medina, with her pronouns and rainbow flags on display in her bio, has a history of talent acquisition within the games industry. However, her role within Haven Studios was very particular, developing a framework specifically designed in the name of diversity. Although I couldn't find the specific framework, their website career page provides some additional insight. The very first step in the hiring process states, "We encourage everyone interested to apply, even if you're missing a few qualifications. Diversity, equity, and inclusion are fundamental to our values." It sounds to me like Haven effectively doubled their staff based on beliefs and vibes instead of qualifications and experience. But my conjecture aside, we can effectively determine that their hiring framework and studio mission statements are reflective of DEI policies, and the studio itself, once a beacon of optimistic potential, is now in dire straits. Where they were once exceeding plans with regards to time, as noted by Herman Hulse in 2021, it's now 2025 and we have yet to see any gameplay. Now, I'm not declaring causation, as there's a lot of factors in game development that can create delays, but in the same interview, without even realizing it, Jade alludes to the impact DEI policies have on the performance pipeline.
We started out with, all of those people are people who have worked together, at least shipping 2 games. And so I think it's great because it gives you the ability to progress quickly and the ability to, make sure that team synergy is there. But, often when you're building a team with the people and you've worked with in the past, since the game industry hasn't been very diverse, it's hard to go and be diverse. And so we actually strategically made the decision to hire a recruiter who's focused on diversity and inclusion.
Did you catch that? If I'm to translate that into my own words based on what I'm hearing, it sounds to me like we strategically made the decision to throw a wrench into team synergy and performance in the name of diversity and inclusion.
They say the greatest con was Satan convincing the world he didn't exist, but Jade conning these companies is a close second.
Now, the recent discourse surrounding Jade Raymond's departure from Haven Studios has led some to label it a scam, further fueling the narrative of her continually falling upwards in the industry. But rather than dismissing this as deliberate deception, I suggest that she may have inadvertently walked into an ideological trap. She fostered this environment with good intentions, only to see it evolve into something unmanageable. This perspective aligns with her own previously articulated philosophies on game development, where she emphasized the critical importance of a culture of respect and the establishment of clear avenues for staff to share ideas and contribute creatively.
The best ideas can come from anywhere. An early example is when Deming had a big influence on the assembly line in Japan. Basically what he implemented was a cord at each station and that anyone could pull to stop the assembly line. All the other assembly lines, it was like at all costs, just keep it running, keep it running. But his approach was anyone can stop the assembly line, despite the cost associated with that, can say what's gone wrong and come up with an answer, a solution. This approach transformed things, and I think if a bottom-up approach to an assembly line can have an impact, think of what kind of impact you can have in taking that kind of approach in a creative field like game development.
A wonderful concept when implemented correctly. But this is a prime example of what happens when you prioritize particular values and it's no longer the most competent staff pulling the cord and stopping production. The train that was once on time and full speed ahead is now completely derailed. There has been no official news from the game in over 2 years. The Haven Studios website is a mess with no updates on their blog in over a year, their email contact link is broken, their social media platforms are dead, and studio lead Jade Raymond has officially left the studio with no official word from her or the team at Haven, leaving a void quickly filled by conjecture. The prevailing narrative suggests that a recent playtest of Haven's unreleased title yielded lukewarm feedback, purportedly triggering Raymond's exit.
Here's what I know that I can share with you, is that the game was distributed in pre-alpha form digitally over PSN to a handful of people. It was distributed as a game called Project Hearts, and it wasn't actually branded as Fair Games. Although what's funny is that the Fair Games logo apparently is in the loading screens. It didn't really matter what they were calling it. It was pretty obvious what it was. It was described to me as something like a battle royale crossed with an extraction shooter. Basically, you're dropped into this open city as a party of 3 or 4 players fighting against other parties in the same city of 3 or 4, and you're trying to basically get to these various arenas with vaults in them, where you rob the vault and then kind of get out of dodge, and people are basically attacking you and stuff, and it's like all team based. The gameplay and like the feel of it was described as a cross between Fortnite and The Division, and it was described to me as quote unquote super clunky, and it quote unquote feels not good, end quote, to play. Doesn't seem like they got good feedback, and that's relevant because I think that she's out because of that.
This theory, however, stands in stark contrast to Raymond's previously stated philosophy.
I highly believe in the importance of playtests.
She has consistently emphasized the critical role of playtesting in game development, viewing it as an opportunity for agile iteration and improvement rather than a definitive judgment. However, that excitement can quickly turn to anguish when you realize you've created an echo chamber of ideologues. When your core principles for building talent changes from finding the best in the industry to finding the most diversity. When the uncomfort of conflict resolution gives way to safe space identity politics, this form of diversity too often ends up in homogeneity, killing both the creativity and the hosts that harbored them. And what's interesting, Jade Raymond of the past knew this.
Everyone gets along, there's no fighting.
Fighting can be good.
Yeah.
I mean, if everyone just said, yeah, like if all my ideas people said, yeah, that's great, we're gonna do that, the game would only be this good. But you know, when people kind of challenge each other, that's how the games get to be great.
Yes, this is all speculation on my behalf. At best, a correlation. And the large majority of the gaming communities and journalists will point to a litany of other factors labeling this as a conspiracy theory. But at the heart of every theory, there's usually some semblance of the truth. And you have to ask, how many studios with the same ideologies have to close? How many points on a map do there have to be before we draw a definitive line?
There's so many of these conspiracy theories, but it does show us something about the power of having a mystery where people can be involved in creating the truth.